Well, there's a mediation process on the go between Wits University and its Student Representative Council, or the SRC. The institution was hit by a wave of protests back in February, I'm sure you remember, as students challenged historical debt and a lack of accommodation. Now, after that dust had settled, the SRC president, Aphiwe Nyamana, found himself suspended with a few other fellow students who are facing disciplinary action. So where are we on the matter, not just of the disciplinary action, but as far as dealing with the issues like historical debt and a lack of accommodation? Well, I'm joined by the spokesperson of the South African Union for Students. It's Asive Dlanjwa joining us this evening. Asive, good evening. I appreciate your time. We'll talk about the suspensions in a moment, but have these protests resulted in anything in this mediation that suggests we could be finding a solution? Good evening.
Good evening, Gareth, to you and to your viewers and listeners. If we're speaking about what would have been the yield of the strike, of the protest, there definitely were, and that's probably what also would have led to the ceasefire initially. This, amongst other things, including the solution to deal with the issue of the accommodation crisis of the students, in terms of in particular, NSFAS students, that it would be within the confines of what NSFAS was providing, and many other wins for the students that would have obviously led to that concession and the ceasefire in terms of the protest. As far as the mediation is concerned, I suppose there is something to take away, the fact that the students will now be able to go back to class from the SRC president, Aphiwe Nyamana, and all other students that had been suspended, because obviously they would have lost a considerable amount of classroom time. So to that extent, I suppose we welcome that, although the nature of the mediation itself is quite confusing, really. But we'll speak about that, I suppose, in this interview.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you what that mediation looks like. That's going to be my next question. But before I get to that question on the mediation, and I'm glad you mentioned that it does seem odd. I've seen other students who are involved in this also saying it is quite a confusing process. We'll get there in a moment, Asive. I want to ask the students who are suspended, just so I understand correctly, under this mediation agreement at the moment, they are back in class. So does that mean their suspensions have been lifted? Is that my understanding?
Yes, to an extent, in the most vague statement made in a joint statement actually between the SRC and the university, the university alleges that no, they are no longer a threat, or the extent to which they are a threat to the university has decreased. You can figure what that means, so they can now go back to class. So I suppose, irrespective of what they say, the bottom line is that the mediation process agreed that they can go back to their classrooms, although those that were student leaders will not be able to assume their roles of student leadership, but they will then be allowed, at the very least, to participate in the academic project.
So now let's talk about this mediation process, because I've just taken a look now at the joint statement that you're referring to from Wits, Sharona Patel, and the other parties involved in this. When you talk about a vague media statement and vague mediation process, what do you mean by that? Help me understand.
It just reeks of thuggery, man, to be quite honest with you, from the part of the university, because the understanding is that the statement says this, which is quite confusing. The understanding is that when you have a mediation process, you cannot concurrently run a disciplinary process. The statement literally says no way in mediation, but the disciplinary process will run concurrently with the mediation process. That does not make sense, because someone goes to disciplinary hearing in the event that so if you take the route of mediation, you suspend all other disciplinary processes and measures, then you go to mediation. And then failure to find each other in mediation, that's why it's called mediation, or mediating, you then institute disciplinary processes. So how do you go to mediation while concurrently running disciplinary processes? So the university here is really being thuggish, because what is going to happen, I guarantee, is that our students are going to be trapped, because when you go to mediation, one of the things that you must do is to assume, or at least accept some level of responsibility and culpability to the things to which you are being charged with, so that the mediation process can carry on and you can find a point of convergence based on the differences. Now, what is going to happen here is that our students, how is that the university is not mediating, is not involved in the mediation process in good faith, because it can always and most probably will take whatever was said in mediation to try and find a plausible and reasonable solution and use that in the disciplinary processes against our students, to the extent to which they would have accepted any culpability. So it does not make sense. And to show you that we are dealing with a high-grade level A thugs here, if they had gone to mediation and had collapsed the disciplinary hearing process as they should have, the university still had all the right in the world to reinstitute disciplinary processes in the event that they're not able to find each other with the students at mediation. Why do you run them concurrently? To what extent can our students participate freely in the mediation process when they know there's a pending gallon above their heads, that irrespective of what's the outcome of the mediation, we will still be subjected to disciplinary processes?
I understand where you're coming from, and I'm going to ask you, as I say goodbye to you, we'll make this just my last question for now, because I suspect this story is going to get a lot more coverage over the next few days. As I say goodbye to you, Asive, here's my last question. I see as well that you're quite right, it's going to run in parallel. Mediation and DC are going to run in parallel. But I also see here, according to the statement, that Mr. Mnyamana not going to exercise any leadership positions as well. So as to your point, mediation is ongoing, a disciplinary hearing is ongoing, and there's no leadership for the students at the moment. So it seems like, I imagine the students would suggest, Wits is holding all the cards here. As I say goodbye to you, would you agree with that statement?
That is literally what is happening. You've fully captured it. They are holding all the cards, and they are victimizing the students, and they're ensuring that they almost suppress their ability to act and to be active in the space through using the threat for them either to be in class or not to be in class. So you are 100% correct.
Well, I appreciate that statement coming out a short while ago. I want to get a reaction from Asive, and I'm sure we'll be getting reaction from the university and other interested parties as well. But my thanks this evening to you, Asive Dlanjwa, joining us, South African Union for Students spokesperson here on eNCA. So you can expect, because it was a massive story back in February, we were there, we were covering it live during those protests. Now mediation running alongside a disciplinary hearing as well. It does make you wonder how it is possible that the two of them can run at the same time. I'm sure we'll be following up various stakeholders in this story. All right.